Okay, we are live. So let's while we're waiting for people to come in, I guess let's just do a little talking about anything paranormal we found recently as people jump into the room. So I did a quick search on. I wanted to find like a possessed musical instrument, right? And it is a lot harder to find than I thought it would be. I did find one really cool story though with it's called like a voodoo guitar. Hello everybody. We got a couple people here. Hello Addie and DJ and Ahmed. We're just we're waiting for a couple people to pop in before we start, so we're just kind of shooting the shit.
Post the stream up.
Post the stream up. So the voodoo guitar. I would have shared that story. Hello Josie and Darren and Russell, right? No, we're not offline. We should be online. Hello, Twisted Gizmo. Why do I have a question mark in my name? Well, I guess I am kind of odd. Makes sense.
I'm guessing it was a slip.
I retract my question. I don't even want to know. Video's not working. Is it working for everybody else?
I can see it.
I can see it.
And while I'm watching it on through YouTube,
Me too. Hello, Lady Billy. What's on the
is
menu?
anybody else having problem with the
an
video,
H?
or are they not seeing the video?
Yeah, everybody can pop up if you have an issue there.
It's
working.
Jose Lopez.
Oh,
We went over that last time.
right. So what's on the menu for tonight? To answer Addie's question, I actually have some really, really cool user submissions. I did read ahead a little bit, and
I'm trying to think if there's any paranormal anything, that I've come across in the last little bit. I can't.
What's that I'm hearing?
Oh, that's actually the stream on my on the phone because I'm looking to post it up on Facebook.
Oh, okay. Hello, Kilumati and Greenfelds and Jose and Barry and Thomas. Action. I don't know what that means. Browson. Don't forget. Oh, right, the chat. Thank you, Russell. Thank you, Russell. You the man, Uncle Sam. I forgot all about that. Hang on now. Window capture. Yes. And we're going to grab... Where is it? YouTube. Where the fuck is it? There's so many windows that I don't even feel I have open that are showing up here. Pop up. This should be it. Yep, that's the one. Here we go, folks. Chat is there. Cool. Hello, Facey Face, Face Facey, and C12. And all right, we got some people here. I guess I can give a little insight into what we will be covering tonight. I had the submissions already picked, Kilimati. Although we will be doing some alien ones again. Hello, Russell. So anyway, I have some really cool user submission stories that I got to. I did read them. I just don't know them well enough to, I could tell you the story, but I'd be missing all kinds of details. So I'm still gonna read them. But basically, we have. Let me just open up my thing here. We have a story where. Really cool. One from Mrs. Kruger. I hope she shows up. She's usually in the chat. But really cool. Remember I asked for late night stories where, something creepy happened on your shift? Well, she got a really cool one that happened to her at an airport. So that's one we're going to look into. We also have one. This was from a military, someone from that was on a military base. Very, very cool story there as well. And we also have one. Remember, I asked for any stories where somebody may have, almost died, like something where you were in grave danger and just narrowly escaped. So I got a story from about that, and I also got a story from Spirit Fired. This was a message he sent me, but it's a big story there. So that's really cool. They're really cool submissions. I read through them already. Like I said, I don't know enough of them. I don't know enough of it to like just give you all the detail, but I will read them, and I can tell you ahead of time that they're really good. Hello, Lucky Strike.
Oh, that's my buddy Russ. Hey, Russ, how you doing, man? Thanks for joining us.
And Chewy. Yeah, Ryan's nickname is Chewy, for Chewbacca. That's kind of his thing. But yeah, we got some cool stories. And again, because Ryan had
Afro Sheen, holy shit.
That's awesome. Hello, Green Terror. Hello, Emma Bedjic. So yeah, we got some really cool stories. And again, if you guys have, any effed up stories of your own, especially like, just for a change of pace. If you have one with, if you've almost been killed by a serial killer, or like was like in a really creepy situation, I'd like to get a couple stories like that. Like, we're still going to do mostly paranormal, but just as like it's effed up stories. Anything really effed up that's scary, I guess. So that'd be really cool if you could send that in. And I guess we'll start. Welcome to the online campfire, where we tell your effed up stories. I am your host, Will Pender.
And I am your co-host, Ryan Sharpe.
And tonight we will be doing a bunch of user submissions. Hello, Mary and Josh. What about murder? So, like, if what I was saying, Mary, is that if you had, like, I don't know, maybe you left work one night and you found yourself being stalked by somebody, and that almost killed you, and or was going to kill you, or you were worried about it, and then one of your friends showed up, or somebody showed up, and they ran away, and then you found out like next week that they were in the news.
If you feel that your story's effed up, send it in, and everything will be by a case-by-case basis. Of course, the channel will focus mainly on the paranormal and the supernormal and the bizarre, but there's some real effed up things that happen to people out there. And
for sure, if you got anything effed up, particularly if it's scary, I think that's maybe one of the hallmarks, right? Like, everybody who watches this show wants something kind of spooky. So as long as it's kind of spooky, like it fits that vein, I think it would have a good chance of being on the show. So we're going to start with, I really wish she was here, because she's usually here, but this is a story from Mrs.
Well, why don't you do the next one?
All right, I'll do this.
She'll pop in.
All right. So we'll start with the military one. So this comes from Dominic, and he calls this story The Third Door. And you'll understand why that is once we get to the end of it here. So, now, Ryan, you can follow the chat so that, Wait, Mary, still you got me upset last week. Oh, yeah, so, Ryan, if you want to just follow the chat, and I'll do this, because it's hard to do both, right?
Yeah.
All right. So this comes from Dominic, and it's called The Third Door. He actually once posted his story to us on sleep paralysis from way back, and he has more that he wishes to submit over, between then and now, but this is the start. So they have this island that's well known in the country as Pulau Tekong. And I have no idea if I pronounced that right, but, Anyway, it was once an island that was populated by people who were relocated to the main island, now reclaimed as a place for basic military training. Yeah, for the nation's conscripts, and AKA, the national service. If you are unfamiliar with the national service in Singapore, it is a compulsory for every male citizen or PR to serve the army. Anyway, however, instead as a place for training, the island is actually infamous for its crazy amount of supernatural events, as the the reclamation of and reconstruction of the military camp means building over graves. We all know that that's a great idea from every horror movie we've ever seen. Poltergeist coming to mind, but yeah, they built the military base over graves, and that's bad mamma jamma. So this is where the story begins. Now there are many different accounts of the story, and you can find this on the internet. However, this account, of the story comes directly from Leonard, who, and I guess, I believe it was his uncle, maybe his uncle. Anyway, someone he knew, comes from Leonard, and he's actually been there firsthand to experience the supernatural encounter. So, this incident occurred in the year 1983, at the age of 18. Leonard was just a recruit at the start of his 2 years conscription, allocated to the Charlie Coy Platoon 3. The company's bunks were in long military barracks that was separated into two segments, one for the recruits and one for the platoon sergeants and platoon commander, along with two doors on both ends of the building. Now, Leonard's company was setting off for a 4-kilometer route march, but before setting off, the company's commanding officer, the CO, asked if anybody was feeling sick. And there was this recruit by the name of Tham, who had actually been feeling, under the weather for a few days, but he still wanted to go ahead on this training. But, his fellow bunkmates, which consisted of Leonard and some other people, they voiced out their concern of Tham's condition, and Tham was made to stay behind and wait until the company returned. So after a few hours, upon returning to the barracks, Tham and his, maybe that's pronounced Tam, I don't know, but it's T-H-A-M, Tam. I should call him Tam. Okay, Tam and his equipment was nowhere to be found. They asked around the camp, and someone from Alpha Company mentioned that they saw Tam walking out of the compound, with his equipment on in the direction, where Charlie Coy had left. The camp was alerted of the missing recruit, and the commanders and officers were activated on a manhunt on the route that Charlie Coy took. And after many hours, the recruit was still nowhere to be found, and the manhunt was postponed to the next day. On the next day, Charlie Coy was activated as well. However, what they did not expect was the grisly sight that they saw in the middle of the trail that they took the previous day. In the middle of the road, Tam was there on his back with his uniform open and lying in a pool of blood. His body had been busted open, his organs were removed and placed next to his body, and his and his eyeballs and tongue were also removed and placed next to his organs. Tam's death was associated with Tam angering the spirits of the forest, or he has met with something unnatural.
With the spirits of the forest?
Yeah, so I'm thinking that there must be like folklore.
What part of the world is this in?
This was, I thought it was Singapore. Hang on now. It's a country of Pulau Tekong, and he mentioned Singapore, so I'm guessing that's, where it was.
Okay.
So anyway, Charlie Coy was told not to spread the news to the other companies to prevent any further drop in morale and to prevent, any unease. And the body was sent back to Tam's family, and prayers were given to Tam's spirit for him to rest in peace. And as 3 days pass, this bizarre smell begins emitting, from the locker that once belonged to Tam. And this happened every night. Now, Leonard mentioned that recruits were really afraid that, at the time, when this happened, and they tried to ignore it until the smell got so bad that it just could not be ignored. And instead of opening the locker themselves, they went to their sergeants and platoon commander, PC, to open the locker. And the PC was skeptic. He didn't believe any of the recruits. I guess he didn't believe in any of this paranormal anyway. And he kept grumbling how such a waste of time this was until he reached the recruit's side of the building. And as the PC approached the locker, you could see that he was still trying really hard to put on a brave front. But as he pulled the locker door open, he winced, he took a step back, and the smell immediately dissipated, and nothing was found in the empty locker, And everyone there in the bunk believed that this was an omen, but nothing had happened until 3 uneventful days have passed. So 3:30 a.m., a really well-known time among many recruits who have been to Pulau Tekong, or however you pronounce it, for training, as that is the time where weird things usually happens.
Witching hour.
Well, right. I mean, that's true everywhere, right? So anyway.
And just as a note, I'm not ignoring you, chat. I just have a 50-pound dog in my lap, and I can't operate my keyboard right now.
So, anyway, the storyteller was actually at this place as well. So at this specific time, during the story, after 3 days, there was a loud banging on the door on the recruit side of the building. And pulling the curtains aside and looking out the window, the recruit saw, and this is odd, a green figure of Tam. Okay, he was green, glowing green or something. Blood was pouring from the empty sockets of where his eyes should be. His shirt was open, and a large cavity could be seen as well. And the specter, the apparition, said, "It's me, Tam. I've come back. Let me in." Leonard remembers everybody scrambling away from the window and through the door connecting to the commander's side of the building. The skeptical PC thought that it was a hoax, walked to the door where the banging was coming from, and upon reaching the door, the banging stopped. Everybody was confused until the PC opened, he pulled the curtain open to look out of the building, only to see Tam trying to peer into the building, face pressed up against the glass and everything. And the PC yelped, ran back to the other side of the building as fast as he could, slamming the connecting door behind him. His face was, that the blood was drained from his face, right? Really pale. And Leonard believes that any skepticism that this PC had was left right there by the window. And Leonard did mention that Tam would only come back to haunt them every 3 days over the course of 2 weeks before they were able to get a medium to check what was going on. And the medium mentioned that the barracks, having been built where it was, over the tombstones and the graves and stuff like that, apparently it contained a lot of yin energy. And after the loss of Tam, the yin energy increased in the bunk and gave Tam a way to come back to the living. So that's interesting. A portal formed. A door was to be installed at the side of the bunk to introduce yang energy into the bunk to break the flow of yin energy. And on the recommendation of the medium, so once the door was installed, Tam never came back to haunt them. And although now the bunks, which Leonard was staying in during his basic military training, are unused now, new recruits will always be walking past, this area during their route marches, and as they pass by, there will always be a building, unlike the others, with a door at the side of the building, which is now referred to as the building with a third door. A spiritual door, or a door made for yang energy to offset the overflow of yin energy. So that was the story that was sent in from Dominic.
And Jesus. I mean, so there's no determination as to exactly what gutted this poor bastard. Like, I mean, that's a way to go. That's a way to go.
I kind of wish there was a more detail on the whole idea that there was there's spirits of the forest there. He angered the spirits there.
No, I've heard of this from a coworker of mine who's also Asian, and like he was telling me that in his village, like if you were out, collecting firewood or something, that and you had to, piss, you would, quickly ask the spirits of the forest for permission, because if you didn't, then it was almost like the fairies, where they would like seriously screw with you. And the story that this gentleman told me, I won't use his name or anything, was that I believe it was his cousin was with them, and he didn't believe in any of the superstitions. And he, went around a tree, took a piss, and, like the next day ended up having some serious penis issues where he ended up having to go to the doctor, and there was all kinds of swelling and some pretty serious problems that almost resulted in a life-altering surgery. But after performing a ritual with a local shaman, everything went back to normal.
Yeah, like when I visit my brother, as long as I ask for permission, he doesn't mind if I piss in his room, like in the corner. It's just like, it's all right. As long as I get permission, he's okay with it. So I get, that's kind of strange, but
I just, the connection between the spirits of the forest. But I mean, Jesus, that seems pretty aggressive for forest spirits. Now, there's also the connection of the graveyard. Now, graveyards in many different cultures, of course, are, connected obviously with the dead, and they're almost always, I don't think there's any culture who doesn't regard its graveyard or wherever it's keeping its dead as a sacred place.
Well,
so when you go stirring up sacred areas, that, and this sounded like it was somewhat of a rural area as well. So I get the connection with the spirits of the forest. Although the idea of having the spirit come back green, that's a new one for me.
Yeah, well, that was weird to me too. Like, it kind of made me think of like zombie or toxic or infected. That's just the color that I associate with it. But
sure.
The interesting thing I find is when you have spiritual activity where there's physical, like an actual physical.
You don't get much more physical than a gutted body.
Right. Like usually you hear cases in poltergeist activity. Yeah, shit throws around the room. Maybe you'll get hit in the face with like a plate or something, and that would be an extreme case, right? But when you have a mutilated body, that is more in line with what I've heard from Skinwalker Ranch, right? Like now I can't remember if that's where they found the body, but they had the cattle mutilation over there, and somewhere someone posted a picture of a person that was mutilated in the same way. He had like very surgically, he had organs and pieces removed in very surgical precision that we can't do, that we know of, right? And that's what it put me in mind of. So, I mean, just because they said that it was a spirit that did it doesn't necessarily mean that. It could have been aliens, right? Could have been aliens that came down and dissected that poor bastard and that's what happened. But I can't understand the coming back part, Green. Like, I mean, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I believe, like I said, we take every story as, just well could have happened unless we were told by the person that it didn't.
I mean, if you look at the Whitley Strieber stuff, and obviously when you said that the torso was split open, the eyes and tongue were removed, the organs were neatly placed by the side of the body. It immediately made me think of course, cattle mutilation, but also in particular the one in Skinwalker Ranch where the the calf was violently torn apart, and then the individual body parts were placed back in their right anatomical positions, very delicately. Now, when you start combining UFOs and paranormal, my mind always jumps to Whitley Strieber, who talked about his contact with extraterrestrials and how there was this connection with, I think in his situation, they were at a cabin with a bunch of people, and several of the people were experiencing visitation by dead relatives while they were being visited by extraterrestrials.
It's bizarre for sure. Like I mean, like I said, like the stories that I associate with it that has anything in common are typically alien abduction stories, and even those, like, it's a niche type, right, where somebody's been actually harvested, and in this case, it's not even harvested. Like the organs were placed next to the body. That's another detail that's really bizarre. I mean, usually
it's obviously not a wild animal who did that.
No, it sounds more like if you left the organs there in just such a way, there's a reason for that. Like whether it's a ritualistic, like, I mean, they said that the organs were laid there, but I mean, I'd need more specifics. Was it laid in a pattern? Was it laid like, I mean, we really don't.
Just a pile. Yeah.
Yeah, we really don't know. But I mean, it's bizarre no matter what, right? Like, it's just a really bizarre case. The fact that it came back doesn't surprise me, because usually, if there's if somebody suffers from a really traumatic death, that seems to be a cause for ghosts, right? I mean, that seems to be the catalyst in a lot of cases where there's so much emotion that happens during
somebody dying of a violent death,
right? And yeah. It's like it's imprinted, right? It's imprinted, and they come back. So that's Dominic's story with the third door, and it was interesting how they had, like I said, the yin yang energy concept in there. Definitely, it's Asian, right? Hello, Jerry. Such a nice young man. I appreciate that, because my wife's been howling at me all day. She's making me think different, right? So I'm gonna hop to, you know what? I'm gonna keep Mrs. Kruger's for last, just in case she does pop in before, So I'm gonna pop up to the next story that I have here, and this one is from Lady Jotaro. Okay. And the interesting thing about this one's a little bit of a different flavor for us. This is one of the ones I asked where, if anybody had a close encounter where you almost died, some kind of creepy encounter, right? So that's what this is. Now, this one's got a lot of spelling errors, so if I, cut me a little bit of slack, I did quickly go through and try to correct a couple of them, but anyway. We're going to tell her story now. And her title for this was, I Was Almost a Headline. And that headline being, Girl and Puppy Found Dead. Okay? I shouldn't laugh at that. What's wrong with me? Why did I laugh?
Who would ever kill a puppy? My God.
You monster.
Ragnar, cover your ears.
All right, here we go. Back in 2001, this took place, and who was popping in and off my fucking Skype all the time? I gotta get a different Skype. Or a different account, I should say. I still got you on there, right, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, 'cause something weird popped up. Anyway.
If you didn't have me, the feed would cut out.
Right. And I can always hear a bit of static on your end. All right.
That's the fan.
All right. We're good. All right. So this happened back.
Yeah, the feed did drop.
Did it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's back. I'm watching it as a delay. Right.
All right. So this happened back in 2001. And she would walk her dog at 10 in the morning, when she had no school. And it was a routine, right? Just like everybody has. So just as you can get the picture, or just so you can get the picture, she was a string bean. She was 12 years old. She had a tiny poodle mix puppy with her. Small puppy, not a guard dog like what you got there, Ryan. So she lived in a trailer park, and she would do laps around, circle the court. That was her ritual. And halfway through her first lap on this particular day, her dog started to look behind, and just as she looked behind as well, she noticed a ugly red Firebird car that had been following her. And at first, she thought nothing of it. Cars drive slow around there because there are lots of kids that live there. And, she was walking to the center of the road. So, as she moved off to the side, which meant that she had to walk on the lawns of the neighbors. And you know how old people feel about kids walking on their lawn? She was she was yelled at for this in the past, right? Because I'm just gonna make a little comment there. Isn't that true? It's like old people are like, you step on their lawn. It's like they could be doing nothing all day, and they got time to pop out of that window. Get off my lawn! Like it's so
I'm like
important.
That now.
Yeah, well, that doesn't surprise me with you, but I don't think I'd care personally. But anyway, old people can be very mean. Anyway, so that's what happened to her. That's why she didn't go on. So she hops up on the lawn so this car can, fuck off and mind his own business. And she picks up her puppy, and the car slowed down even more. And at this point, she started to, feel those goosebumps prick up on your neck. And she said she felt like prey. So, at the same time, something was telling her not to run. So she just started to walk faster. She knew that her house was on the other side of the court, and her 12-year-old brain knew that, if this guy was after her, she wasn't that far from home, but she didn't want, she was very afraid that she was going to lose her puppy, right? That was the big thing. She didn't. If he takes my puppy, I'm going to die. That's what she was thinking. And so anyway, she, and I'm sorry, I got gas here from drinking this Powerade. I'm fucking burping here, right? But anyway, so she turns around, she walks faster, and the faster she'd walk, he'd drive a little faster, right? So she started walking steady, turned the bend, and the trailer was gone. Or a bend that her trailer was on, sorry. And this cranky old lady that always yelled at her for walking, her dog on her lawn, stuck her head out of the window about to yell, and then suddenly turned around and ran back inside the house.
Well, that's always a good sign.
That's always a good sign, right? Don't get help or nothing, But anyway, when she could, she just kept on walking, and eventually she feels the fucking bumper on her leg, and that's when she began to run.
Jesus.
And just as she thought that he would speed up and he just couldn't, or she wasn't going to make it to her house, she knew that he'd hit her or something like that, right? Like he was just terrified that this was going to happen. So it occurred to her that she used to babysit some kids that lived around there, and they were a few houses down from hers. And although they were on vacation, she had the keys because she used to go in and feed the fish and feed the cats. So she'd have a better chance getting into their house than she would get into hers. So she started to run in these zigzag patterns behind the houses, without fences, so that he wouldn't know what house that, she went to. And once her shaking hands finally got the key in the door, he had seen her go in and, unfortunately, slowed down in front of the trailer. So she peeked her head out from the mini blinds to see this dude fiddling around with some kind of thing. She doesn't want to know what. It's probably something really little, right? If you catch my drift. Anyway, so then she heard this voice behind her, behind her and her pup. And her pup began to bark, and she jumps like 50 feet. But she remembered this lady that she babysat for was really nosy, and that she had a radio that used to pick up police calls, right? Like a police scanner, I guess. So, she, calmed her breathing down, and she just began to think. And she just got this scanner, and she put the scanner on, and then she heard it. There was a suspect vehicle spotted tailing a little girl and her dog. And the suspect was armed and dangerous. That's what you want to hear, right?
Jesus.
And then she heard sirens on both the scanner and outside the trailer that she was in. And then she heard the car take off. And a man was found behind the trailer court that day. Police had surrounded him, and he was found alive with an electrical cord around his neck because he was attempting suicide. And in the back seat were rope, duct tape, a knife, and some other things that she doesn't remember. And this was a wanted man. He was wanted for murder. Only a few days earlier, he had raped and murdered a 5-year-old girl. And he was the family friend of her mother, right? And anyway, he dumped the body into this field. And there was this was a small town. Just so small, in fact, that this girl's mom, the one in the story, her mom cleaned his hotel room, when the new cops came to investigate, right? That's kind of bizarre, right? Your mom ends up cleaning the hotel room of some guy that ends up trying to catch you and rape you and kill you. So this man, anyway, had only had one victim. But it wasn't for, if it wasn't for her own mother instinct for her puppy and that cranky lady's police call, she doesn't think that she'd be here today. And her puppy, which she named Lucky, is a 16-year-old dog, and she's a 27-year-old woman now. And, she'll never forget the feeling of being hunted. And God be with the little girl that would have been 21 now had the savage not murdered her. And she actually gave me a link to, the actual story. I have it on my screen. I don't know if I can show this up. It's CBC News. You know what I can do? I can do this. There is something I can do. Remember you said if I could post a link? Right?
Yeah.
I found something I can do. Hang on. For anybody who wants to take a look at it. Window capture.
I know that the idea of a serial killer, of murderers, and not just, somebody who kills somebody out of anger or during an argument or some shit like that, but, like people hunters. We usually call them serial killers.
That's the link. Sorry.
Okay. Did you try just posting it? You may be allowed to post links.
I think I tried. I mean, I'll try it, but I've tried before, and I think it never let me. Let's see. No, let me do it. Look at that. I have special powers.
So, I mean, serial killers have always been something very interesting for me. And I guess it's just a macabre fascination with somebody. It's kind of like an alien. A serial killer is kind of like an alien. Like their mind is so different than a regular person's.
Oh yeah, well they've done. They've actually put it under. Is it an
Active
MRI?
MRI.
Yeah, an
Yeah.
active MRI, and could see that different portions of the brain operate differently during, certain visual and audio stimuli, right?
Yeah.
For example, one of the things that they say for a lot of people who have anger issues and I guess tendencies for this stuff, I believe it's the frontal lobe is different. I think that's what it is. Like if you get hit in the head a lot up here, um, that could actually make you an angry person. If you suffered a lot of trauma to the front of your head that affected that frontal lobe in your brain, as you get older.
Alcohol does it too. It's called Korsakoff syndrome.
There you go. Right. I don't know what syndrome you call this, but it's not good, right? And there's some people that are just born, they're just born, it's a defect, right?
But I think that's, well, for me anyway, I think that my fascination with serial killers is the alien nature of their mind, I guess that's the most terrifying aspect of it, is that that there's no reasoning with them either. Like whatever they're gonna fucking do, they're gonna do. That's it.
I wonder
Right?
if it's like when I think of them, it reminds me of a shark, right? Like a shark is a killing machine. It's just built to kill.
Cold,
It's
calculating.
cold and calculating, and it's just its nature, right? It's its nature. And sometimes I wonder, like people say that the world is overcrowded, that there's too many of us, that we're a strain on our resources and food. And anyway, I wonder if
Nature's answer.
just like tornadoes and hurricanes and earthquakes, it's just a natural way to thin the herd. Now, unfortunately,
Well,
like it's bad for everybody. Like, obviously, it's terrible when somebody is murdered. Like, it's just awful in the way that it happens. But I don't think anybody would choose to want to think that. Like, I don't think anybody would want to choose to be away where you're ostracized and can't fit in either, right? Like, it's bad
yeah.
for everybody. Um,
I've often wondered, like I've thought about that specific theory as well, um, and I wonder if it's like a stress response. Once there's certain animals like I don't want to say lemmings, but there's lots of different animals that when they get stressed out, when populations hit certain levels, their behavior changes, or a certain percentage of them will have a behavior change. And, I wonder if that may very well be the case with serial killers in the human population.
yeah, well, I've always found serial killers interesting. I've read, I don't and watched, I don't know how many documentaries on, Ed Gein and Albert Fish and um,
Richard
Richard
Ramirez.
Ramirez and what's the clown guy? Casey or Casey. Anyway,
Oh, geez. Edgar Casey.
yeah, and
No.
and Jeffrey
So-
Dahmer. Like, I've gone
Oh,
away.
Edgar Casey. Geez, he was the great American psychic, wasn't he?
Yeah, not him, not him. The guy that used to
Ed
dress up as a
Gein.
clown. Yeah, I said Ed Gein. No, but the guy that used to dress up as a clown. Like,
Gacy.
is that it?
Yeah,
Gacy.
Gacy.
All right. Yeah. So, like, I've watched John Gacy. That's it. So, like, I've always found it interesting, just how, because it's such a polar opposite to the way that we think. And I guess like any mystery, when you don't know the answer, it's interesting, right? You just like, you kind of want to figure it out. But I mean, there's lots of them. The only one that I can think of right now off the top of my head that actually cared, like that believed, I guess, that he was going to be punished was Ted Bundy, right? Like, I mean, the night before, when he knew that he was going to the electric chair, like, he begged, to have it, to be let free. He was like scared shit. Apparently he was up praying all night, because I mean, it's one thing doing it, but like, everybody's got to die. Everybody dies, right? So if you have a belief in the afterlife and that your actions are going to determine where you go, well, he was fucked, just like a lot of these guys. But everybody doesn't believe. But that's what I find interesting about him, because he was obviously had a Catholic belief system, and yet he just went and did these horrible things. I mean, he had to have, right, to be up praying all night that he wasn't going to be to go to hell or whatever. And then look what the shit he did, right? I mean, how do you think he was ever going to get out of that?
The Crusades.
Oh yeah. It's okay.
The Crusades.
It reminds me of they portrayed that pretty good in that game, Dante's Inferno, right? It's like, it's all right. Forget about it. You're helping the Crusades, so like you're absolved. You're absolved. Yeah, but I guess the human condition, hey, like, we can justify anything. Well, until we get there anyway. But so that's that story. Let me see. I had one from, like I said, I'm doing the one from Mrs. Kruger last in case she pops up. Kind of thinking she's not going to pop up, but we'll start with this one. This came from Spirit Fired. Hello, Thomas Kemp. I just saw that. And Alicia. And
hello to everybody who's joined us, because I've seen there's been quite a few people pop in while you were finishing off the story there. DJ
Maniac, Tiger Dreams, anybody who
Radioactive
Karaoke, anybody that I missed, because I can't watch both. But if I missed you and I didn't say hello, Jerry, hello.
Old Uncle Leo.
Remember when he got his eyebrows burned off and Elaine fucking drew those angry ones on him? And the doctor was like, "You're being difficult." Right? Anyway.
Threw him out.
Yeah. That's a Seinfeld thing. But all right, so this came from Spirit Fired. He actually sent this to me in YouTube. Just for the record, though, for anybody who sends in stories, it's best to send them to my email, because I don't often check my my Google stuff. So, my cat was here?
Yeah, he was playing peekaboo behind the chair.
Oh.
Every now and then he'd peek out there.
Far
out.
Far out. Take the pen, Will. I don't get it. But anyway.
Take the pen, Jerry.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I got you. All right, so this came from Spirit Fired. I don't know if he's here or not. I don't know if I saw him show up yet, but he's usually here. So he'll.
Here's my brother. Wubba lubba dub dub.
All right. So I don't have a title. I don't have a title for this. We're just gonna go. Good. We got another Seinfeld fan. I fucking love that show. I still watch it. George and Kramer are probably my favorites. For sure. Anyway, I'm not going to go off. I could go on forever with Seinfeld. All right. So this is two encounters that happened to Spirit Fired. And I have to call him Spirit Fired because he never told me his real name. So he said, "Do you remember the Black Eyed Kids thing?" And of course we remember. So he met this indigenous Australian. Wherever. Now, no fuck Seinfeld. Seinfeld's awesome.
Oh, that's Russ stirring the pot.
If he don't like Seinfeld, he probably likes Friends, which was like the gay version of Seinfeld. But anyway, so this is comes from indigenous Australian people. or a person that he met that was, an Australian person. Anyway.
Australian Aboriginal.
There you go. And he refers to this being as an ancient one. And the interesting thing is he refers to this being as uncle. He refers to this being as an uncle, which is really weird. And as Spirit...
Keep going, I'll be right back.
Yep, and as Spiritfire knows, indigenous people call their non-blood close people their uncle or cousin. So, that kind of that sort, so he doesn't think that this is a biological relation. Like, it's just something that I guess their culture refers to them as. And this uncle has pure black eyes. And he was very clear about this, emphasized that point that he had clear, pure black eyes. And as far as he can understand, he has wrinkles. And this is kind of interesting because in any case, or in general, in most cases that I've personally heard as well, anyone with the black-eyed kids, any story that I've heard on them, that they seem to be kids. I mean, it's right in the title, right? Black-eyed kids, BEK. And the only other case that I really was familiar with was the one we covered with that woman who was like growing up, but she wasn't old anyway. So it's very, very rare to hear of a story of a black-eyed kid that is not a kid, somebody with black eyes. So anyway, basically, this is the norm for this uncle, right? He told him that he was disillusioned or something, and when he's attacked by paranormal beings, his family sent him to the bush. And, this might be an indigenous saying. Who is Will and Grace? Well, obviously I'm Will. Ryan is Grace. Sorry. Anyway, when he, let me see. And he lived this being in the woods or something. So this uncle, okay? This uncle lived with this being in the woods, okay? And he was alone with this being for periods of time. And this is very different, as we know that, those who let the black-eyed kids in are typically afflicted with very bad things, right? I mean, in most cases, it's people die. It could be from cancer. It could be from tragic accidents. It could be whatever, right? It's just bad things that happen. So that's what makes this story really strange, is that, this guy had actually spent time alone with this thing. And anyway, he mentioned to him that, when he was talking to his friend, he mentioned to him that people get afflicted with horrible things when they let these black-eyed kids in. And that's when his friend looked at him with this warm smile. And he said, the key point here is you walk behind them and never in front of them. And aside of Spiritfire telling the story, he had this inkling that what this uncle is, he had an inkling of what this uncle might be and what it means. And maybe because that being is the same, star family as he is, and he's protecting this man. But this man also refers to aliens as beings here to help us, right? And in Spiritfire's opinion, he's a bit naive in that sense. It couldn't know better if we think about the malevolent species of aliens that we know so far, right? Because we got abductions, we got, weird implants and shit like that. But anyway, Spiritfire just couldn't get this out of his mind because, he has this book by David Weatherly. And for anybody who's not familiar, David Weatherly, he writes a lot about the that's one of his big subjects, is the black-eyed kids. We actually had him on our show to discuss it. So,
terrible audio quality, but good talk. Yeah,
good talk, yeah. So, Spiritfire was really, weirded out, I guess, by this. And he said this conversation that he had with him made things very, very different as far as he could, as he believed the black-eyed kids to be, and, how it's supposed to go. And for now, and probably for a long time, he won't be talking to this friend again, especially about this uncle being, because, he said it feels so pushy, and he's not one to go out very often or even have the courage to just walk past him again. Apparently, he's homeless by choice and sits on a very unavoidable side of the road. I like how he put that in caps. But anyway, he said, he would like to know more. He doesn't want to go up, I guess, and push the subject. But they had a very long conversation about it anyway. And when he thought that they said, or that the guy said ancient one, he meant like those Native American little spirits, like the Teru Bazu, but with the two long legs taking up all the space where their torsos would be. And he actually posted a link for a video. I'm going to post that in there too. Apparently it's one of those beings, and you guys can check that out.
Is it like the, what do they call it, the night stalk?
Well, whatever a Teru Bazu is, that's two long legs going up instead of where the torsos would be.
In the U.S., there's this, or there was a video that came out of the U.S. That, it looks like one of those Night Stalkers. Now that looks like a fake one.
All right, but anyway, to Spiritfire's shock, which he did not express outwardly, it was a BEK-like being, only that it was uncle and supposedly an old man. And he said he made it very clear that his whole eyes were black, and he kept the conversation as natural as possible without, prying too much. And, Spiritfire, he's kind of dancing around this, but he said, this guy's a very nice man, but when it comes to the beings that are attached to him, he also said that, their punishment is swift and brutal. So Spiritfire treaded with caution around the subject with this guy, right? And he said it feels oddly, so right to him, not morally right, but it feels so natural, like this should be its exact nature. I don't know if everybody else is following along. I'm getting a bit lost, but anyway.
Well, I had to take the dog out to pee, so I'm completely lost.
All right, so I just waiting to see if anybody, has if anybody's right on this, because I'm trying to follow the thought, the way that this is going, and it's a bit hard to follow. Anyway, so he Spiritfire said he knows indigenous people have some kind of inherent power, and this guy that he's speaking to, he's from a weird but cool sounding indigenous tribe out of 5 of his type of tribe or something. And anyway, he said that essentially where's he going with this? That, this guy is royalty when it comes to the ranking of his tribe. So bloodline royalty, right? And he fits in everything a certain star family, may kill to protect. So I guess if I'm trying to make sense of this guy that he's talking to, this purposely homeless guy, he spent time with these black-eyed kids or entities like that, and he's a part of a very niche tribe that is considered royal blood. Is very important, and he has I guess has a relationship with some of these entities that normal people don't have. An insight to them that normal people don't have, and that's why he can have this relationship with these entities. And because of the subject matter, and because they're supposedly very dangerous, Spiritfire didn't want to pry too much, because he didn't want to put himself in danger when he was talking to this homeless guy. So anyway, he said he doesn't know he has this ability to talk to any stranger and talk about deep shit for hours. And this homeless man, he managed to talk to him so long that people around them began to stare in awe and hung around and eavesdropped. And Spiritfire even cried a little when he said, that he has a third eye, which in this world fills him with superficial pleasures and emptiness that overwhelmed him and, made sense to him. So I don't think he has a lot more to add to that. It's just a lot of questions. I think I just nutshelled it, didn't I? He found a homeless guy that he kind of used to talk to, and the homeless guy is from a tribe very close in a tribe considered royal, a high-ranking tribe, and he has special relationships with entities known that we refer to as the Black-Eyed Kids, and I guess I guess that's the whole point of it, as he gets to, I don't know, special relationship with those guys and knows things that we don't. So
I know that with the Australian Aboriginals, they have a really interesting creation story about how the world came to be, and that at one point the whole world, all of existence, existed in what they refer to as, I believe, dream time.
Okay.
Or something like that, and that it basically was this point where all things were possible, and there were all manner of entities and beings. I find it very interesting to get stories like this out of somewhere that's so, to us is strange. I really don't know a lot about Native Australian or Aboriginal Australian culture, but it's very interesting to think about the tribes as having this royal-like hierarchy, and that the upper echelon of that hierarchy is able to have a special relationship with non-human entities that we share this world with.
Yep. So I got one last story. This is Mrs. Kruger's. I held on to it to last because I thought she might pop in and hear her own story, but I'm gonna tell it, and she'll just
we can always hang on to it till next week, but that's up to you.
No, because then I gotta go find another one. And truthfully, it was a neat story. And, it's exactly what I asked for, like those late shift, creepy stories. You're doing a late shift and something creepy happens.
Hey, look, it's my buddy Sean. Wow, everybody's joining tonight.
Not my wife.
Sean, what's that?
I said not my wife.
Not your wife, no, but she has joined us before. Yeah. Sean is a good friend of mine and has been a great help with helping raise my puppy horse here. So yeah, thanks for joining us tonight, bud.
All right, so this will be our last story for tonight, and then maybe we'll shoot the shit a little bit, but then I got a jet. All right, so this came from Mrs. Kruger, and this is a late night story. And if anybody else has stories along this vein too, you had a late shift somewhere where you had like something really effed up happen to you. You're alone in your office or your construction site or whatever, something really fucked up happens. I would love to get more stories like that. Or if you're a nurse or you're work in a hospital. Hospital stories are always creepy, hey? The paranormal hospital stories. I'd love to get some more of those. So anyway, this is Mrs. Kruger's story. She is an aircraft auditor. And, she worked in her state capital airport. She would work the night shift in order to audit all the aircraft on the ground and then catch a couple coming in during the AM hours of the morning. And many people pass on aircrafts. This is a little known fact, but, have unknown blood clots, heart issues, strokes, many different reasons, but a lot of people actually die on, when they're taking a flight. So her typical night was checking from 5 to 25 planes, nose to tail checks. Takes around 35 minutes each. She works alone. Sometimes she may run into customs, pilots, crew members, but that is few and far in between. There are many times that the aircraft are shut down, no lights, or anything like that. So she actually carries one of those little pen lights, so she could do her checks. And there's several incidences that she would like to share. And the one that broke her, it happened, of course, on a very stormy night, my favorite. Around 3:30 a.m. was when she boarded the plane. And the plane, or that's when the plane was released for her to check. And she said the lightning was really bad that night, so most were on lockdown until it was safe to board. It was, now I'm not familiar with the plane types, but it was a DC-9. So I guess you could Google it if you're really interested to know what kind of plane that is. She said she boarded, checked the cockpit, and, the forward lavatory first. And she had this very eerie feeling that she rode off, just as, the atmosphere of having been in a storm. There was a storm wailing outside. The lightning was flashing. And I guess that just added to that, right? So she worked her way down to the aft lavatory, which was in the back of the plane. And after checking it, she heard a moaning sound. The stereotypical ooh sound that someone is, trying to scare you. So, if you were trying to scare somebody, you might make that sound, right? And silly, she thought, as she poked her head out of the lavatory to look down the aisle. As she glanced down the aisle, seats all facing away from her, and she saw nothing. And she paused there, stone still, maybe for 20 seconds. Pen light shining on what it could. And when lightning flashed, it was one of those storms that makes the lightning look like a strobe light. Several flashes would happen all at once, and with every flash, something would flash from one seat to another.
Fuck.
Yeah, right? There's something on the wing of the plane. No, but anyway, it's like if you stare at one spot and you use your peripheral vision to see everything, and she was seeing something flash from one seat to one further up, but on the other side, and then it would, pop or flash somewhere else. And she went back into the lavatory, back to the mirror because, she said her ass isn't that brave, right? And she tried to shake it off. It happened so fast that she literally did not believe her own eyes. And then she heard the silly sound again, and she peeked again. There was no lightning this time, and she saw nothing. And at this point, she thinks, maybe she has just gone batshit crazy. Maybe she needed some time to rest. She had one more puddle jumper to check before a 4-day weekend. And she decided to finish checking the aft galley and then scoot. And she checked the galley, back to all the seats, and then she was hearing several noises in the process, She finishes and she turns around to leave when she heard a deafening pop. She dropped her tablet. She did her audits on her tablet. And she put her hands to her ears, eyes wide open. And she saw several things all at once, in rapid succession. She saw 2 men, a child, and a dog. The 2 men were wet, and somehow all the lights had snapped on. And they all stood before her. She said the child she looked down to had to be around 4, and the dog was dry, standing next to the child. Standing next to the child with his arm resting on the dog's back. The older of the 2 men spoke, and she could hear him even with her hand still slammed, cupped around her ears. And he first said, "Breathe." And that's when the dog moved to her feet, and she reached down to touch it. And she'll never forget the feeling. She said her hand still remembers, that feeling as she was typing this up. She said it was just this sheer cold, fur slick like metal, but bone-chilling cold. She said the child smiled, dog leaned on Mrs. Kruger's right calf. Her hand was on the dog, and the man reached out to touch her left cheek. And she was thinking, will his hand be as cold as the dog? And then she heard the aft galley door pop open. And here was the food truck guy, Jim, a robust black guy that always made her laugh, and he was about to board. And the second she heard the door, she turned her head to look, and the light shut off. And the two men, the child, and the dog were gone as soon as she looked back. Jim looked shaken. He ran in, grabbed her, took her to his truck out the aft galley door, sat her down. He said that lightning had hit the plane, and he saw them. He saw, these figures in there. So lightning actually hit the plane, and that's why he was worried and went in there. He said he was asking all sorts of questions. And she, of course, was in a total daze, like she was waking from a deep sleep. And he kept feeling her hand, her right hand. Or no, sorry, she kept feeling her hand, her right hand, and she still felt the dog, on her hand, on her right calf. She said her leg felt numb where the dog had leaned on her. And Jim took her to his office and sat her down, and he told his manager what he saw. And about halfway through, Mrs. Kruger snapped out of it, and she just told him to stop and leave the room so he could tell his manager what she saw before he did. He understood, and he told her everything. Or she told him everything. Jim came back in, and then she listened to his side of it. And he said that they had just locked down the plane that she was on. The lightning was really bad, and as he was driving by, lightning hit the plane. And he said he saw a glimpse of Mrs. Kruger when the lights came on through the aft galley window. In the window when the... where the fuck was I? He was driving by. He saw a glimpse of Mrs. Kruger when the lights came through the aft galley window in the door, so he pulled up. And when he approached the door, he saw two coal like black things standing in front of Mrs. Kruger, and two smaller ones next to her as well, and with her hand on one, and the biggest black thing looks like it was reaching out to touch her face. So he just saw black apparitions. And he said he was so scared for her that he opened the door, and he said that they were gone by the time that he actually stepped in. And the two big ones, and he says, the two big ones were, and he said the littlest one was, halfway up the aisle and seemed to turn to him. It said in his head, it said to him in its head, "It's okay, mister. We know her and she's okay now. Yell at the lightning, not me." And he said it giggled, and when it did, a dog barked. And Jim said that the dog bark instantly made sense to him. The way that, Mrs. Kruger was standing, and I guess the way that black apparition was, it must have been of a dog. And he said that it looked like she was petting a big dog, while she was standing there. And hearing his side of the story freaked Mrs. Kruger and the manager right out. The manager had heard Mrs. Kruger's side of the story about the two men, the child and the dog, and then what, Jim, the other guy, saw was completely different. And he said they were so dark that it looked like you could fall into them. Like, it was like a black hole, fuzzy around the edges, and the blackest black he had ever witnessed. He also said it was freezing cold when he opened the door, and it shocked him the moment he entered. He said it was like he was staring straight out, eyes blank, hands down. She was. Mrs. Kruger was staring straight out, eyes blank, hand down, and seemed frozen, stiff, except for her right hand, which barely moved, like she was petting a dog. And Jim said that she never moved to look at him, but Mrs. Kruger said she knows that she did. And she remembers petting the dog with her, with her whole arm, not just her hand, like a person would normally run their hand down the back of an animal. Basically what she saw was totally different from what Jim saw. And they, but they still experienced the same thing, but with a difference of perspective. The cold that Mrs. Kruger felt was from them, those apparitions that were in there, not the air around her. Whereas Jim could feel the cold upon entering the plane. So, he felt it all everywhere, and Mrs. Kruger just felt it emanating from the apparitions. Jim said he heard the boy speak to him in his head, but Mrs. Kruger could not say the same for sure. Maybe, but all she heard was breathe, just breathe and you'll be fine, in a deep male's voice. And that would have been the older guy, right? And she said it wasn't scary, just mature with a hint of a southern drawl, a drawl or whatever. And of course, that was the last plane that she checked that night. And after her 4-day weekend and several calls between herself and Jim, when she went back the next Monday, word had got around. And after that night, she had several intense incidents happen. Some with witnesses and some on her own. Many people have actually hunted her down to tell her their experiences, including pilots, crew members, and other auditors that they had on yearly collaborations in Atlanta. And there were 47 of those auditors, in 2010. And she, thinks every one of them, would tell her a story every year when they would meet in Atlanta. Some took liquid courage to tell their story, and others seemed desperate to share. Like they had held it in long enough so that they could tell someone that would believe them. And she said,
well, professionals and that kind of a job is very difficult.
Oh, fuck yeah.
For
sure. And, she said she does have to say that she was scared, probably the most frightened that she had been in all of her life at that point. But when the lights had come on and those figures were before her, she was in total awe of them. She's seen many others, but none quite like the first time. And she asked me to leave out the name of the airline below, so I will. She said, thank you for the show. It was a welcoming break from the mundane. She really enjoys watching live and interacting with other like-minded individuals. And she said our chat is the best she's seen on YouTube. Thank you so much. That in itself is something to be proud of. So, Ryan, we're proud, right?
Oh, very much so.
Very much proud.
We have a fantastic viewership. Yep. Everybody, intelligent, funny.
A community.
I sense, yeah.
The misfits.
I always get the sense of a very like-minded group.
For sure.
Most everybody is thinking along relatively the same lines, and everybody has a fantastic sense of humor. I really love doing these streams. I love doing the podcast, but the streams there's so much more to it.
Because we get to know our fans, right? Like we get to interact with, and
exactly.
I mean that's something that we always kind of wanted. I think from the the original thought of what Effed Up Stories would be. That's why it was always Effed Up Stories. It was always going to be your stories, right? And it's just this is the natural progression that the show should have taken. I think it was a long time coming, and except for like lack of time and laziness, maybe we would have had it done sooner. But anyway, apparently she had a bunch of other stuff happen. She has a story about when she worked at a hotel. One when she after she retired from the airline.
What in the world? I mean, just to recap, 3 entities on an airplane that was struck by lightning.
Well, okay, this is going to be an interesting conversation. But before we get to it, I'm just going to quickly say, yes, Mrs. Kruger, if you want to send more stories, I'd love to hear them. I mean, there's never going to be a time, people say, like, I have more stories if you want to hear them. needn't ask. If you got
Yes.
stories, just send them in. We're more than happy to take them and put them in a podcast. So,
and that means you too, Russ. I know you got a story and that you've told me. You need to get that into us, buddy.
Yep. Any story. So, let's talk a little bit about exactly what she saw, because there was lightning going on, right? Let's just analyze this one section of it, because this is a section that got me. It was a stormy night. There was lots of lightning, and she's there. Lightning apparently struck the plane. I mean, that's something that when you're hearing the story, maybe it sounds like it's glazed over, but that's what happened. Lightning hit the plane. That's what alerted Jim, the food guy or whatever he was, to go in and check on her, because he knew that the plane had been cleared and that she was on it. Right, so he was worried for her. So he hops on the plane, and he does see apparitions, but he sees them as black shapes. Right, she actually saw what they were. She saw, the adult
or what they wanted her to see.
Yeah, she actually. Here's my thought. Okay, here's my thought on what happened there. It's almost like she almost died. I mean, she even had like the numbness in her leg and shit like that. Like, you got a shock, right?
Yeah.
So lightning strikes the plane. I think that if she didn't die, it was only by their intervention. And it almost came across to me like those beings that were there were maybe people that she knew in a past life or something like that, right? Like when people die or when they're having a near-death experience, oftentimes they see... they actually see the a family member or somebody they know or somebody who's familiar or just somebody
some kind of guide.
Exactly, a guide, right? And so she's there. She sees was it 2 old men and a boy and a small dog, or I think it was something like that, like 2 older gentlemen, a small boy and a dog. And
two guys, a girl, and a pizza place.
yeah, no pizza though. But they're there and they're comforting her. They're saying, it's okay. You're going to be all right, as if they showed up to protect her. Like maybe either the lightning was going to kill her, and they were saying, whether that happens or not, you're okay. We got you. We'll guide you to where you need to go. Or if they flat out went there to protect her, because that's kind of more of the gist that I got, is that they intervened and stopped her from, actually dying. And then the guy that goes in there...
Mary. The old man told her to breathe.
Right. Good point. And then 5 Guys, 1 Cup. I wouldn't watch that shit. Anyway... Fuck me. Anyway, the gym guy gets on the plane and he sees the apparitions as shadows, because he's not dead, and he sees what I guess a lot of people see as the paranormal, right? You walk in and you see a shadow person or fragments of what that entity would be, but you can't see it. You're not crossed over. You're not on that plane of existence. Right, you get a glimpse, a shadow of something peering through, where she was probably there shortly for a short amount of time. She might have been dead and possibly, saw this shortly, right, for a short amount of time. And I think that's why their perspectives were different. However, I do think that it's interesting that telepathically, the little boy spoke to Jim. And more or less said, don't worry about it. She's okay. And let's talk about that telepathic communication, because that's often something that everybody who seems to have a near-death experience, that's what it is telepathic communication. It always is. That's what they always say. It's like nobody opens their mouth. You don't hear it
when they're conversing with somebody. Yeah,
exactly. So it's interesting that Jim heard it like that, but it makes a lot of sense that Mrs. Kruger saw it like that, or experienced it that way. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. Is that she either did have a near-death experience, a short one, and or, these people that showed up intervened to protect her. Maybe it was her guardian angels. I don't know. Right? That was. That's my thought. Obviously, lightning hit it. She seemed to even have physical symptoms to some degree. The numbness and stuff like that. So, Ryan,
yeah, I think I would have to agree with you there. Obviously, there's all kinds of implications when people are talking about lightning strikes and strange entities. And somebody asked, do you think it could have been a portal? Well, simply from the fact that we have no idea about exactly what other dimensions are all about, or portals, or how they're comprised, or stroke. Yeah, Sean. Perhaps, but at the very least, there does seem to be a connection between strong electromagnetic fields and paranormal activity, that it can create conditions in the brain that are conducive to us perceiving certain supernatural events. So it could explain why Jim just seen, large dark shapes, whereas Miss K seen supposedly their actual forms, or the forms they were at least projected. It's a very interesting crossing of events. I don't think I've ever heard of ghosts on a plane that was just struck by lightning, and the various little counterpoints in between. So when she touched the dog felt like metal. Is that like smooth?
Yeah, not only like metal, but very wet and cold. Right? That's the way she described it.
See, it seems like, oh man, I almost want to say, that whatever it wasn't what they were showing themselves as.
No, it was it was definitely. Here's what I heard, right? You could take this to mean whatever you want, but a lot of people, and again, like, this is under the assumption, say it was a near-death experience, right? But a lot of times, apparently, what people see, the entity that greets you, that looks like your grandmother, isn't necessarily your grandmother, but it takes on the form that it thinks that you would be most comfortable with, right?
Sure.
And, that's one of the theories anyway. I forgot to show something, by the way.
Oh, the photograph.
Yeah, for Lady Jataro's story. Remember the one where she was stalked by some guy in a car that, this guy that had murdered and raped a young girl previously, and that's who was after her? Well, she added an image, or she sent me a picture. I guess it shows her then and now with her dog. So I guess it's just another, piece of media that you can throw into it to put the picture together. We do have to link to the actual story that kind of reinforces that it happened. And I'm just gonna throw the picture she sent to me up here as well. So yeah. That's the picture. That's the same shit. It's the same dog, right? I guess that might have been closer to how old she was when the story happened, and that's probably her now. So I get what she says. Like, she referenced that, the dog was like, she had this motherly instinct because, she raised the dog from, just look how small he is right there, right? In that picture. He's a little tiny pup. And, I get that. I feel like that with my cat, right? And even more so now with my son, my biological little boy. So I totally get that. So that's something I forgot to throw up there when we were doing it. But, yeah, we still got lots of submissions. but I can't do them tonight.
No, I think that's all we're going to have time for tonight. Something I wanted to point out to people who are saying that they're not getting their notifications. Next to the subscribed button, you'll see a little bell. I do believe you have to click that bell now to get your notifications. And that was a change that YouTube made that they didn't tell anybody about.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay. Also, though, I will add this, that we actually have had a couple of fans who've messaged me and said that, they weren't getting their notifications. And I had heard that, YouTube had this glitch where people were being unsubscribed from channels.
Yeah, and some were completely unable to resubscribe afterwards.
Yeah, some of our subscribers had, when they went and looked, they'd actually been unsubscribed. They didn't know how, right? So, anyway, blame YouTube, right? So that's all it is. So anyway,
so if you're not getting your notifications, click the little bell, and it should you should get them from now on.
Yeah, and you know what?
And hit that like button. Just mash the hell out of it.
Before we leave, though, I never think to do this. Is there any particular stories that you guys would like us to cover sometime? We get suggestions all the time, but you guys show up at our show all the time, so it would be good to kind of cater to the people who are at the show. Yeah. Right. So if you guys have particular specific topics that you'd like us to look into sometime for a show, not just aliens, but a particular case or something like that. Yeah, Rob, to your question, yes, I totally plan to do. I got pictures from you that you sent with your submission, and the only reason why I didn't do it this time is I forgot to download it off the server. But I have them. So I'll try to make a point. The next show that we do, I'm going to hopefully get yours on there. I got a couple new picture stuff from people. So we'll try to get those out there as well. I mean, a lot of older stories I have are both stories and pictures. And really we should be covering more of that as well.
Ones that feature my beard.
Stories that feature Ryan's beard. Well,
don't have any paranormal, despite Will's insistence that there's a Dybbuk in there.
Well, one of these days, I just picture dark hands coming out of your beard and doing nefarious things without your knowledge of it happening, right? But
as long as it's doing them to other people.
No, to you.
Oh, to me.
It could be an atomic wedgie, a front wedgie.
Melvin.
There you go, a Melvin. Or the dreaded Rear Admiral.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
But, yeah, the Dybbuk beard. That's what I was calling it for a while, yeah. But yeah.
So I seen stuff about, secret agent. I'm guessing, you're talking about more conspiratorial. There are some interesting kind of dark agent, deep secret stuff that we could probably cover.
Oh, for sure. I wouldn't mind doing some conspiracy stuff. I mean, the truth is, Ryan and I have been, we've been big fans of conspiracy stories for more than a decade. We just don't normally cover it because we're very aware that channels get shut down for shit like that. And we got a kind of a knack of finding some pretty niche stuff sometimes. We're just very aware that we could cover something sometime, and then just our channel's gone, and that would suck. But maybe we'll look into some neat ones like that we can cover. But is there anything specific that you got? Let's see, Ghosts at Sea. You know what? I love that. Dogman, werewolf cases. I actually bought a book last year or something like that by this author that's local to me, and it's all about things that people have experienced out at sea. Now, all the stories aren't great, but there were a couple pretty cool. I'm sure we could find some online. So
David Pallades ran over my cat.
Make it a hashtag, right?
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I just seen something. Men in Black is always a topic that, I personally love.
Without fail, you see it too, right?
Oh yeah. Oh, I seen it earlier. You missed it. I think it was Mary. Geez, in the first half an hour.
It's like, so let's talk about ghosts. You know what? Fuck David Pallades.
But yeah, let's touch on ghosts.
Yeah.
Giants. Yes, there are a few good giant stories. I actually have one from a friend of mine that he something he's seen in the Middle East.
I'd like more fucking Navajo / Indian shaman black magic corpse powder like stories. If we could find something we haven't covered, right?
Yeah.
Voodoo or hoodoo.
There you go. Yeah, Jose nailed it. Native American legends and stories.
There you go. Yeah, you know what? I'm down with something like that for sure. I'd love to do something on that.
I'll do a little poking around, see if I can't get some of those kinds of stories from people I work with and whatnot.
Cool. And yeah, I would like to look personally into some hoodoo like curses and stuff like that. I like to find the ones that are really fucked up where people die. Because I'm normal.
I want to look into some Santeria.
There you go. Yeah, that's another one. So yeah, maybe we'll look into some stuff like that, and and no Bigfoot rape. No, we've covered enough of that.
Yeah.
All right, cool guys. Well, I'm gonna go and probably read a couple. It's always jarring when I do this, right? Like I either come from reading my son's stories to doing this, or go from here to reading him stories. That is like here is like. It's all these bizarre cases. Then I go out and read fucking Bernstein Bears, right? The Bernstein Bears when they get their first doctor's appointment. Or anyway, guys, thanks for coming out and watching the show. I always find it interesting that people care to hear us blather on.
Why is it we always max out in viewership right at the very end?
Because it takes a while, I guess people are like, well, there's nobody there yet. It's just like a party, right? Party starts at 8, but nobody shows up till 11.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's just the way she goes. Sometimes she goes, sometimes she don't. This time she didn't go. All right, guys.
So again, thank you so very much for joining us. Yes, John, the psychobabble. The psychobabble is strong with us. And we greatly enjoy being able to do it with one another and with an audience, and to be able to share your stories. That's the best part.
It is. I love
people in.
I love getting people's stories. That's the biggest perk of doing this show is that I have shows popping up in my email, or stories popping up in my email that I haven't heard before. That's one of my favorite parts of it. But anyway, yeah, we'll pick this up again next week, and we'll hopefully have some really new and cool stuff for you guys. Have a good one, everybody.
Have a great night. Thank you.
Did you just go? No, I was.
No, I did not. I just waved. I didn't see what you done, but I know what you're implying.
All right. Good night, everybody. Have a good one. Window capture. Yes. And we're going to grab... Where is it? YouTube. Where the fuck is it? There's so many windows that I don't even feel I have open that are showing up here. Pop up. This should be it. Yep, that's the one. Here we go, folks. Chat is there. Cool. Hello, Facey Face, Face Facey, and C12. And all right, we got some people here. I guess I can give a little insight into what we will be covering tonight. I had the submissions already picked, Kilimati. Although we will be doing some alien ones again. Hello, Russell. So anyway, I have some really cool user submission stories that I got to. I did read them. I just don't know them well enough to, like I could tell you the story, but I'd be missing all kinds of details. So I'm still gonna read them. But basically, we have. Let me just open up my thing here. We have a story where really cool one from Mrs. Kruger. I hope she shows up. She's usually in the chat. But really cool late. Remember, I asked for like late night stories where something creepy happened on your shift. Well, she she got a really cool one that happened to her at an airport. So that's one we're going to look into. We also have one. This was from a military, someone from that was on a military base. Very, very cool story there as well. And we also have one. Remember, I asked for any stories where somebody may have, almost died, like something where you're in grave danger and just narrowly escaped. So I got a story from about that, and I also got a story from Spirit Fired. This was a message he sent me, but it's a big story there. So that's really cool. They're really cool submissions. I read through them already. Like I said, I don't know enough of them. I don't know enough of it to just give you all the detail, but I will read them. And I can tell you ahead of time that they're really good. Hello, Lucky Strike.
Oh, that's my buddy Russ. Hey, Russ, how you doing, man? Thanks for joining us.
And Chewy. Yeah, Ryan's nickname is Chewy for Chewbacca. That's kind of his thing. But yeah, we got some cool stories. And again, if Ryan, if you want to just follow the chat, and I'll do this because it's hard to do both, right?
Yeah.
All right. So this comes from Dominic, and it's called The Third Door. He actually once posted his story to us on sleep paralysis from way back, and he has more that he wishes to submit over between then and now, but this is the start. So they have this island that's well known in the country as Pulau Tekong, and I have no idea if I pronounced that right, but anyway, it was once an island that was populated by people who were relocated to the main island, now reclaimed as a place for basic military training. Yeah, for the nation's conscripts and AKA, the national service. If you are unfamiliar with the national service in Singapore, it is a compulsory for every male citizen or PR to serve the army. Anyway, however, instead as a place for training, the island is actually infamous for its crazy amount of supernatural events, as the reclamation of and reconstruction of the military camp means building over graves. And we all know that's a great idea from every horror movie we've ever seen. Poltergeist coming to mind, but yeah, they built the military base over graves, and that's bad mamma jamma. So this is where the story begins. Now there are many different accounts of the story, and you can find this on the internet. However, this account of the story comes directly from Leonard, who, and I guess, I believe it was his uncle, maybe his uncle. Anyway, someone he knew, comes from Leonard, and he's actually been there firsthand to experience the supernatural encounter. So, this incident occurred in the year 1983, at the age of 18. Leonard was just a recruit at the start of his 2 years conscription, allocated to the Charlie Coy Platoon 3. The company's bunks were in long military barracks that was separated into two segments, one for the recruits and one for the platoon sergeants and platoon commander, along with two doors on both ends of the building. Now, Leonard's company was setting off for a 4-kilometer route march, but before setting off, the company's commanding officer, the CO, asked if anybody was feeling sick. And there was this recruit by the name of Tham who had actually been feeling, under the weather for a few days, but he still wanted to go ahead on this training. But, his fellow bunkmates, which consisted of Leonard and some other people, they voiced out their concern of Tham's condition, and Tham was made to stay behind and wait until the company returned. So after a few hours, upon returning to the barracks, Tham and his, maybe that's pronounced Tam, I don't know, but it's T-H-A-M, Tam. I should call him Tam. Okay, Tam and his equipment was nowhere to be found. They asked around the camp, and someone from Alpha Company mentioned that they saw Tam walking out of the compound, with his equipment on in the direction, where Charlie Coy had left. The camp was alerted of the missing recruit, and the commanders and officers were activated on a manhunt on the route that Charlie Coy took. And after many hours, the recruit was still nowhere to be found, and the manhunt was postponed to the next day. On the next day, Charlie Coy was activated as well. However, what they did not expect was the grisly sight that they saw in the middle of the trail that they took the previous day. In the middle of the road, Tam was there on his back with his uniform open and lying in a pool of blood. His body had been busted open, his organs were removed and placed next to his body, and his and his eyeballs and tongue were also removed and placed next to his organs. Tam's death was associated with Tam angering the spirits of the forest, or he has met with something unnatural.
With the spirits of the forest?
Yeah, so I'm thinking that there must be like folklore.
What part of the world is this in?
This was, I thought it was Singapore. Hang on now. It's a country of Pulau Tekong, and he mentioned Singapore, so I'm guessing that's, where it was.
Okay.
So anyway, Charlie Coy was told not to spread the news to the other companies to prevent any further drop in morale and to prevent, any unease. And the body was sent back to Tam's family, and prayers were given to Tam's spirit for him to rest in peace. And as 3 days pass, this bizarre smell begins emitting, from the locker that once belonged to Tam. And this happened every night because Ryan had
Afro Sheen. Holy shit.
That's awesome. Hello, Green Terror. Hello, Emma Bedjic. So yeah, we got some really cool stories. And again, if you guys have, any effed up stories of your own, especially like, just for a change of pace. If you have one with, if you've almost been killed by a serial killer, or was in a really creepy situation, I'd like to get a couple stories like that. And we're still going to do mostly paranormal, but just as it's effed up stories. Anything really effed up that's scary, I guess. So that'd be really cool if you could send that in. And I guess we'll start. Welcome to the online campfire, where we tell your effed up stories. I am your host, Will Pender. And
I am your co-host, Ryan Sharpe.
And tonight we will be doing a bunch of user submissions. Hello, Mary and Josh. What about murder? So, if what I was saying, Mary, is that if you had, I don't know, maybe you left work one night and you found yourself being stalked by somebody and that almost killed you, and just or was going to kill you, or you were worried about it, and then one of your friends showed up or somebody showed up and they ran away, and then you found out like next week that they were in the news.
If you feel that your story's effed up, send it in, and
Yeah,
everything will be by a case-by-case basis. Of course, the channel will focus mainly on the paranormal and the supernormal and the bizarre, but, there's some real effed up things that happen to people out there. And
for sure, if you got anything effed up, particularly if it's scary, I think that's maybe one of the hallmarks, right? Like everybody who watches this show wants something kind of spooky. So as long as it's kind of spooky, like it fits that vein, I think it would have a good chance of being on the show. So we're going to start with, I really wish she was here because she's usually here, but this is a story from Mrs.
Well, why don't you do the next one?
All right, I'll do that.
She'll pop in.
All right. So we'll start with the military one. So this comes from Dominic, and he calls this story the third door, and you'll understand why that is once we get to the end of it here. So he now Ryan, you can follow the chat so that Wait, Mary, still you got me upset last week. Oh, yeah. So. Okay, we are live. So let's while we're waiting for people to come in, I guess let's just do a little talking about anything paranormal we found recently as people jump into the room. So I did a quick search on I wanted to find like a possessed musical instrument, right? And it is a lot harder to find than I thought it would be. I did find one really cool story though with it's called like a voodoo guitar. Hello everybody, we got a couple people here. Hello Addie and DJ and Ahmed. We're just we're waiting for a couple people to pop in before we start, so we're just kind of shooting the shit.
Post the stream up.
So the voodoo guitar, I would have shared that story. Hello Josie and Darren and Russell, right? No, we're not offline. We should be online. Hello, Twisted Gizmo. Why do I have a question mark in my name? Well, I guess I am kind of odd. Makes sense.
I'm guessing it was a slip.
I retract my question. I don't even want to know. Video's not working. Is it working for everybody else?
I can see it.
I can see it.
And while I'm watching it on through YouTube,
Me too. Hello, Lady Billy. What's on the menu?
Is anybody else having problem with the video,
H?
or are they not seeing the video?
Yeah, everybody can pop up if you have an issue there.
It's Jose Lopez.
Oh,
we went over that last time.
Right. So what's on the menu for tonight? To answer Addie's question, I actually have some really, really cool user submissions. I did read ahead a little bit, and I'm
trying to think if there's any paranormal anything, that I've come across in the last little bit. I can't.
What's that I'm hearing?
Oh, that's actually the stream on my on the phone, because I'm looking to post it up on Facebook.
Oh, okay. Hello, Kilumati and Greenfelds and Jose and Barry and Thomas. Action. I don't know what that means. Browson. Don't forget. Oh, right, the chat. Thank you, Russell. You the man, Uncle Sam. I forgot all about that. Hang on now.